Hello students, myself Dr. Vasundhara Saxena, as you can see over here. I am from Ramesh Institute and I will be covering a topic in your pharmaceutical jurisprudence. It is subject of third year with a university code as BP 505T, and in that subject, that is pharmaceutical jurisprudence, I will be covering unit 3. According to AKtU University, you have 5 units and I will be covering unit 3, in which there are 3 acts and one of the act is Pharmacy Act 1948. Pharmacy Act 1948, and then we will come to Medicinal and Toiletry Preparation Act, and then Narcotic and Psychotropic Substances Act. I would be covering these 3 acts in your syllabus. So, when we talk about Pharmacy Act 1948, Pharmacy Act 1948, we will be covering the history of Pharmacy Act. Let me explain about an act. If we talk about an act according to pharmaceutical jurisprudence, or you can say this subject is related to laws, and when we talk about laws, then particularly if we go deep inside to it, then if we talk about the act, then the act covers the history, basically the history or the objectives, that why it was developed, what was the need to develop that act. Then some particular definitions. Definitions means some terminology that is specific to it. Like if we use a simple word like medical practitioner, and then what it in terms of this Pharmacy Act means. So there will be some definitions, objectives, and then we will be covering the education regulations in it. The Pharmacy Council, the council that is made, and as we all know that as an organization is needed to follow up the rules and build up the rules and to check whether the things are going in the process or not, in particularly according to the laws or not. So then there will be a council, and if we talk about Pharmacy Act, then there are Pharmacy Council of India at a central level, State Pharmacy Council at state level, and a joint state pharmacy council and its constitution. So when I will be covering this constitutions in detail, I would be telling you the organization, the numbers, and how the members are being elected. So after that, there is a registration of pharmacist and its offences and penalties. In any act, you will be going through at the last the offences and penalties, because if you will disobey the laws, then there is obviously there are some offences and penalties that has to be followed up. So in Pharmacy Act, I will be covering the Pharmacy Act, history, objective, definitions, education regulation, Pharmacy Council, State Pharmacy Council, Joint State Pharmacy Council, registration of pharmacist, which is very much important for you all graduate students, and offences and penalties. If anyone disobeys the laws and the regulation, then what will be the offences and penalties that has to be followed up. So this is all the content that I will be taking in this lecture, or the subsequent lectures will be coming up one by one after the other. So in this lecture, I would be covering your history, objective, definition, education regulations. Education regulation, because it is the major role of Pharmacy Council, that is to regulate the profession of pharmacy. So this is the most important thing that you have to go through, that is education regulation. Education regulations will bring up the minimum requirement of education, the minimum things that has to be there in the institute or the industries where we are going to manufacture the drugs and all. So if we talk about history of Pharmacy Act, objectives and definition, and education regulation, this would be covering in this I would be covering this in lecture. So let's see about history of Pharmacy Act, that why did it come up, what was the requirement of Pharmacy Act to be built up. So if we see, in India there was no restriction to practice the profession of pharmacy. Anyone, anywhere, any place, any kind of people, they can give and provide medication. For example, if we talk about the present condition in our India, कि कोई भी इंसान किसी भी तरीके से मेडिसिन ले सकता है, दे सकता है, there is no particular type of restriction that has to be there because medicines directly affect the human body. So according to myself, जिस तरीके से इंडिया में अभी हम कर रहे हैं चीज़ें उस तरीके से नहीं होनी चाहिए. तो फार्मेसी एक्ट अभी इसलिए ज़रूरी था क्योंकि अगर हम पहले की बात करें, दैट इज़ बिफोर इंडिपेंडेंस, तब तो सिचुएशन और भी वर्स थी. देयर वाज नो रेगुलेशन, no education regarding this profession. So in India there was no restriction to practice the profession of pharmacy. The compounding or dispensing of medicine was done by not adequately educated people, causing great harm to the health of people, and it was found necessary to enact a law for the regulation of the profession and practice of pharmacy. So at last this act was promulgated in 1948. Promulgated in 1948 means this act came into force in 1948. So if we talk about the previous time, that was the condition of India. There were many people who were working with the profession but were not adequately educated. That I have mentioned over here, that the medicine was done not by adequately educated persons. So the people who were dealing in this profession were not educated. They were only experienced person. Experience also counts, but if you are educated, then education plus experience gives a positive and better results. Many people in India were not educated by degree, but they were experienced. But they used those experience in a wrong manner. Anybody was indulged in compounding and dispensing of medicine, which ultimately brought great harm to the health of people. Common people की health पे बहुत बुरा effect पड़ रहा था. Therefore, it was found necessary for an law to be enacted. अब law क्यों बनना जरूरी था? क्योंकि जब इंडिया में चीज़ों अगर हम कहीं भी किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की बात करें और चीज़ों को अगर हमें नॉर्मल लाना होता है तो देयर शुड बी रूल्स. if we talk about any institution in colleges etc, then there are rules that has to be followed up ताकि चीज़ें synchronized हो, यूनिफॉर्मिटी हो और चीज़ों को हम कंट्रोल कर पाएँ. तो if we talk about here Pharmacy Act, it was the main objective कि हम उस प्रोफेशन को कंट्रोल कर पाएँ, प्रैक्टिस ऑफ फार्मेसी को कंट्रोल कर पाएँ. तो इसलिए in the end of 1948 the act was promulgated. Promulgated means it is a new terminology for many of the people. So please go through this word promulgated, that is implemented. The act was implemented in 1948. Now let's see the objectives of the act. Objectives, if we talk in Hindi, what is the उद्देश्य? That is उद्देश्य, हमारे इस एक्ट के उद्देश्य क्या हैं, कि इस एक्ट को बनाने के पीछे लॉजिक क्या था, क्यों हमने बनाया. तो हिस्ट्री से कुछ ड्रॉबैक्स हमने अभी देखे प्रीवियस स्लाइड से. तो अब हम देखते हैं व्हाट वर द ऑब्जेक्टिव्स. दैट वाज टू प्रिस्क्राइब मिनिमम स्टैंडर्ड्स ऑफ एजुकेशन, restrict the practice of profession, to monitor their professional work, to recognize the qualification granted outside the territories to which Pharmacy Act 1948 extends. So these were the four major objectives through which this act was formulated. So let's talk about one by one. If we talk about the minimum standard of education required, we all know that in present condition there are degree, diploma and master's degree in pharmacy. We can also go for doctorate also, but the minimum is diploma, that is the diploma in pharmacy. Then it comes to degree. Diploma course is of 2 years, degree course is of 4 years, and then master course is again for 2 years. So what is the minimum standard of education required? That is, if you want to be in a profession of pharmacy or a pharmacist, then what are the minimum qualification required? Compounding, dispensing, pharmacist. So these are the different job profiles that you will have to face after doing this profession. So this education was fixed as the minimum education that you have to, that the person who is in this profession has to qualify to go into this profession. So, if we talk about diploma in pharmacy, many vacancies are there in which only diploma is observed for compounding and dispensing of medicine. But if we talk about before independence, anybody who has just the experience to compound the medicine, to dispense the medicine, or they were put into the profession, and as they were not well educated, they were not aware of the small mistakes that they were doing at that particular time period. So, minimum education standard was one of the main objective of this act. Now, coming to the next point, that is restriction to the practice of profession. We all know about that jhola chhap doctors and all, that they just have a degree and open the store, medical store. But this medical store and this profession is greatly affects the health of the people, because medicines are basic requirement nowadays, and if we go to a doctor who is not well educated, or the medical practitioner who is not very well educated. For example, for normal diseases we go to the dispensary, or you can say the pharmacy shops, and take the medicines for common cough and cold. But if we talk about a case like the person who is attending at the pharmacy is not well educated, then what will be the problems faced? A person comes and says that he has a stomach problem, and the person standing there gives you a painkiller for stomach, but that stomach problem was an issue of different problem. That was the side effect due to some different problem. The person standing in the pharmacy does not know the case of the person, and he just prescribes or gives the simple medicine. It will lead to the dysfunctioning of the human body. So, the dispensing of medicine has to be controlled. Therefore, to restrict the practice of profession, कि अगर कोई profession में है, involved है, तो he or she should be well educated, so that he can correlate, link the diseases which a person is suffering from. Directly कोई भी किसी medicine को OTC के form में दे देना एक patient को is not advised at all. बट इंडिया में ये चीज़ बहुत प्रिवेलिंग है, तो एटलीस्ट हमारी जो डिस्पेंसिंग फार्मेसीज़ हैं हम वहाँ पर कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं कि द कंट्रोल इज़ इन द हैंड्स ऑफ एजुकेटेड पर्सन, एक्सपीरियंस्ड पर्सन, एंड नॉट इन एनीबडीज अदर हैंड्स. Then we come to the third point, that is the monitored their professional work. If we see that manufacturing of medicine from industry also comes in professional work, education also comes in professional work. So, when there is an organization formed, it is his duty to see that the laws formed by the council are being regulated properly by the people working in this profession. So, to monitor the professional work was one of the main objective of the Pharmacy Act 1948. That if we have made such laws, if we had made such regulations, then whether they are working accordingly, whether the industries are manufacturing accordingly the medicines, whether the dispensing is being done accordingly to the laws, and education given by the colleges are according to the laws. So, basically we will focus these three sectors for the regulation of these rules. Now, coming to the fourth point, to recognize the qualification granted outside the territories to which Pharmacy Act 1948 extends. When we talk about Pharmacy Act 1948, it is an act which came in 1948. But before the period, before 1948, there were things which were going on, but there were deviation according to the laws. तो अब हमें उस चीज़ों को भी इस लॉ के अकॉर्डिंगली टर्न करना है, कंट्रोल करना है और फॉर्मुलेट करना है. तो there will be many cases which has to be undergone and has to be converted in this form. So, 1948 से पहले जितने भी केसेस थे या जितने भी कंपाउंडिंग्स हो रही थी, डिस्पेंसिंग हो रही थी, उन सारी चीज़ों को भी हमने एक प्रॉपर चैनल के थ्रू प्लेस किया है और उसको रेगुलेशन के अंदर लाए हैं. तो लास्ट पॉइंट, टू रिकॉग्नाइज द क्वालिफिकेशन ग्रांटेड आउटसाइड द टेरिटरीज. जैसे कि जो भी आउटसाइड द इंडिया अगर हम कोई पढ़ाई करते हैं, या इंडिया में इफ़ एनीबडी डूज अ pharmacy profession and goes outside India to do his profession, then what will be the status? If somebody from outside India after doing his graduation in pharmacy wants to do his business in India, then what will be the norms? So all these comes under this fourth point, that is to recognize the qualification granted outside the territories to which Pharmacy Act 1948 extends. So these were the main 4 objectives of this act. Now moving to the third portion of the class today, that is definitions. I have already told you that according to the act there are few terminologies that you have to be thorough with it. So if we talk about exam point of view, there are some terminologies which are directly asked in the questions, what do you understand by these such words. So here are some of the important words that one has to be thorough with it. Now let us see it. What are the points? Pharmacy Act 1948 जो बना था, that was an act to regulate the profession of pharmacy. In other words, we can say that the Act 1948, that is Pharmacy Act 1948, can also be termed as an act to regulate the profession of pharmacy. So if we talk about the exam point of view, there can be a single answer that what define Pharmacy Act, then you can easily write it is an act to regulate the profession of pharmacy. Now coming to the next point, that is registered pharmacist. Registered pharmacist, it is an important for all the graduates as well as diploma holders, that how do we get the registration, how do we get ourselves registered in India to become a registered pharmacist. So if we talk about registered pharmacist, let us see the definition. A person whose name is for the time being entered in the register of pharmacist of the state in which he or she is for the time being residing or carrying on his profession or business of pharmacy. So point is कि registered pharmacist कौन होते हैं. First, education. If you have done your diploma or a degree course in pharmacy, you can apply for the registration in that state in which you are being residing or you have taken your education. So it is mentioned over here that a person whose name for the time being entered in the register, that is the register in the office in which your name has to be entered, that this person has completed his education and now he is or she is capable to be a registered pharmacist. Your name being written in that registers gives you a certificate that you are a registered pharmacist now. That depends on the state in which you are residing. For example, if you have completed your education in Uttar Pradesh and your residence of residing in Uttar Pradesh itself, then you have to move to the Uttar Pradesh Pharmacy Council, and in that office you have to register your name to be termed as registered pharmacist. After this, that is his profession and business also. For example, if you are doing your business in another state, then you have to bring your name to that state in which your name in which state you are taking your profession as pharmacy. So after your name has been written in Uttar Pradesh and you want to do your business in Madhya Pradesh, then you have to request the UP government or UP council to transfer your name to the register of Madhya Pradesh. This is the whole protocol that you have to follow while practicing the education as well as the business in pharmacy. So this was the registered pharmacist. I hope you have understood. Registered pharmacist, that means your name has to enter in that register of the state in which you have done your education or you have completed your or you want to do your business in that state. So these were the two terminologies on this slide. Now let's look at another point, that is medical practitioner. Medical practitioner, don't confuse it with medical representative. There are two terminologies together, medical practitioner and medical representative. A person if has done his pharmacy, then he or she is eligible to become the medical representative. And if you are a doctor, in literal words you are a doctor in some branch, then it is medical practitioner. Let us go through the point. A person holding a medical qualification as provided in the Indian Medical Degree Act or Indian Medical Act, or a person registered or eligible for registration in the medical register of the state, or a dentist or a veterinarian. For basically speaking, the three categories that comes under medical practitioner is the doctors, dentists and the veterinarians. And who are veterinarians? Veterinarians are the doctors of animals. If these three category people have done their qualification and want to get themselves registered, then they have to go to Indian Medical Degree Act Council. Like Pharmacy Council, there are Indian Medical Degree Act which gives you a register to be written as medical practitioner. Then your name has been entered there and you are representative as a medical practitioner, and this is different from medical representatives. Medical representatives are the person who has done their profession in pharmacy, or you can say education in pharmacy. So, this was the another term, that is medical practitioner. Now, look at to the another point, that is displaced person. I have just a few minutes back I have talked about the last point of the objectives. Let us see what was that. The last point was objectives ka to recognize the qualification granted outside the territories to which Pharmacy Act 1948 extends. Now, here is one word that you have to learn, that is displaced person. For example, if we go to the state government to get ourselves registered as a registered pharmacist, but this process is for after 1948. But if somebody is there who has started his profession before 1948, then what were the conditions? Displaced person means any person who, on account of setting up the dominance of India and Pakistan on account of civil disturbances. That means before independence, जब ऐसी चीज़ें हुई थी कि if somebody was in India or Pakistan have changed their places, or if somebody has taken education in Pakistan and doing his business in India, or vice versa, then those persons were termed as displaced person. And if they will come to the registration in Pharmacy Council, then their name will be written as a displaced person. अभी कोई direct जाएगा after doing his degree and diploma, then he will be a registered pharmacist. But in case of this condition, like कि जिन्होंने एजुकेशन अपना इंडिया में लेके पाकिस्तान में प्रोफेशन किया, या पाकिस्तान में एजुकेशन लेके इंडिया में अब रिसाइड कर रहे हैं, या वाइस वर्सा, कुछ भी ऐसी कंडीशन हुई थी, दैट इज बिफोर फर्स्ट डे ऑफ मार्च 1947, then those people are categorized as displaced person. Let's go through the point again. Means any person who, on account of setting up the dominance of India and Pakistan, or on account of civil disturbances or fear of such disturbances in any area now forming a part of Pakistan, has on or after the first day of March 1947 left or been displaced from his place or residence in such area, and who has since then been residing in India, are termed as displaced person. So, this is one of the most important terminologies that one should go through it. So, it is better to learn it by heart, that who are displaced person. Now, another point that is important for you is repatriate. Who are repatriate? If जैसे कि अभी last slide में हमने discuss किया that displaced person, same terminology के base पे हमारा एक और word आता है repatriate. Now, let's see what was the condition of repatriate. Repatriate means any person of Indian origin who, on account of civil disturbances or the fear of such disturbances in any area now forming a part of Burma, Sri Lanka or Uganda or any other country, has after the 14th day of April 1957 left or has been displaced from his place of residence in such area and who has since then been residing in India. That means any person before 14th day of April 1957 कोई भी अगर बर्मा, श्रीलंका, युगांडा से अगर आकर इंडिया में रहता है और प्रोफेशन को फॉलो अप करना चाहता है, then he will be termed as repatriate. So these were the some important terminologies that you should be thorough with it. Now comes the education regulation. Education regulation was the main motive of our Pharmacy Act. Pharmacy Act 1948. Now let's see what is the education regulation or the points. The central government make regulation to be called the education regulation. In simple word, we can, and anywhere we can see that it is written as in capital ER. ER means education regulation. What is the role of education regulation? That is prescribing the minimum standards of education required for qualification as a pharmacist. As we have earlier talked about the education, minimum education that has to be required, then it will be for a pharmacist, then we can term that person as a pharmacist with minimum qualification. Education regulation may prescribe the nature and the period of study. That is according to PCI, that everybody know that if we study B pharmacy or D pharmacy, we have to follow the syllabus of PCI. Then what is PCI? That is Pharmacy Council. And what is the role of Pharmacy Council? That they have to prescribe the minimum standards, that is the nature and time period of the study, the practical training to be undertaken before admission to the examination, and the minimum equipment and facilities to be provided for going through the course. That is, we are talking about the institute that has to be full with these conditions to give the education. The subject of examination and the standard therein to be attained, any other conditions of admissions to the examination. So these are the points that you will be seeing through the syllabus in that has to be followed, that कि अगर हमारे सब्जेक्ट्स होने हैं तो किस सेमेस्टर में कौन सा सब्जेक्ट होना है, उसकी कितना टाइम की क्लास होनी चाहिए, प्रैक्टिकल्स कितने होने चाहिए, प्रैक्टिकल का टेन्योर कितना होना चाहिए, हमारी क्वालिफिकेशंस के अकॉर्डिंगली हमारी जो एजुकेशन में ट्रेनिंग्स होनी चाहिए वो कितने ड्यूरेशन की होनी चाहिए. ऑल दीज कम्स अंडर दिस पॉइंट. Education regulation shall be published in official gazette and in such another manner as the Central Council may direct. Official gazette, here is the one word official gazette, that it is an official document, that is the if we talk about the syllabus of Pharmacy Council, then it is an official document that has to be known to all कि अगर student इस batch से इस batch तक का है तो according to PCI उसने किन subjects को पढ़ा है, उसका theoretical point of view कितने marks का बनता है, practical क्या होता है, training क्या होती है, and all sorts of these things that has to be mentioned in a proper document which is termed as official gazette. So official gazette जो कि ये क्या है, एक ऑफिशियल डॉक्यूमेंट है जो कि हमारे जो भी नॉर्म्स हैं, जो भी रूल्स हैं, उनको हमने कंपाइल करके उस चीज़ को पब्लिश करने के लिए रख रखा है. तो एजुकेशन रेगुलेशन में ये एक पॉइंट आता है जो कि हमारा फार्मेसी काउंसिल का बड़ा मेन रोल होता है इसको बनाने में. तो ये सारी चीज़ें हमारे एजुकेशन रेगुलेशन का पार्ट बनती हैं. The Executive Committee shall from time to time report to the Central Council on the efficacy of the education regulations and may recommend to the Central Council such amendments thereof as it may think of it. That is, time to time हमें किस तरीके से काम करना चाहिए वो Executive Committee जो होती है वो उसको formulate करती है, check करती है, और उसमें कोई भी अगर हमें corrections required होते हैं तो उसको वही official gazette में correction करके आगे committee को forward करती है. So this was about the education regulation that we have seen in through Pharmacy Council. Thank you class, and I will be coming up with few more topics of Pharmacy Act in another class. Thank you.